All right. Hello, everyone, and happy Halloween. Welcome to this month's KeyShot webinar. My name is Rex Roberts. I'm the lead user experience designer here at Luxion, based in our Orange County, California headquarters. And I am super excited to present to you today the What's New in KeyShot 9 webinar. We've been very hard at work on this new version and have a lot to cover, so let's jump right on in. As always, a recording of this webinar will be available at youtube.com/keyshot3d, where we'll also post a download link to this presentation. The comments section on YouTube is a great place to get engaged in the KeyShot 9 conversation and let us know your thoughts on new features and also requests for future learning content topics. Today, I'm presenting on a beast of a machine. This HP Z8 running Windows 10 Pro has two Intel Xeon Gold 16-core processors, equaling 72 threads total. I will have a little demo at the end. I'll probably knock back the cores a bit. This machine has two NVIDIA RTX Quadro 4000s and also a Quadro K2200, and I'm running just my displays on that 2200 so that those Quadro 4000s are dedicated to rendering. As always, we have the questions panel and some Luxion staff members in there. We do have a couple new additions to the Luxion team that are helping to answer questions in the chat panel. They'll also be contributing to learning content creation for KeyShot 9 and beyond. So we thought this would be a good opportunity for them to say hi and introduce themselves. So this is me on the left, and we have Ryan and Kareem. What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Ryan Levy. I'm the Global Training and Creative Specialist here at Luxion. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, or if you have questions about KeyShot training, please reach out via email at ryan@luxion.com.
How's it going, everyone? My name's Kareem Merchant. I'm one of the new creative specialists here at Luxion. Super excited to be part of the team. I'll be creating all kinds of new learning content for you guys, so keep your eyes open for that. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at kareem@luxion.com or my LinkedIn at Kareem Merchant.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, so the contents of this presentation today, we're going to go over some general KeyShot 9 release and purchase info. The bulk of this presentation will be covering the top new feature and improvement details and also some examples of those. And then at the end, we should have a little bit of time to demo a couple of my favorite new features, which is Denoise and GPU mode. And then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So as far as release and purchase information, we are excited to announce that KeyShot 9 is set to release on November 5th. So that is coming up very soon, next week, in fact. And that day is the last chance to upgrade KeyShot 6 licenses, or actually November 4th will be the last day to upgrade KeyShot 6 licenses. From November 5th on, if you are running KeyShot 6, you will need to then purchase the full version of KeyShot 9. So if you are still running KeyShot 6, now is the time to take advantage of our upgrade promo, so you can get KeyShot 9. For more information, you can always visit buy.keyshot.com or reach out to sales@luxion.com. So this is the good stuff. We've split up the new features and improvements into 4 general categories that you can see on the screen now. So for import and integration, we're taking a look at a few new features and improvements here. A big one is a streamlined import process and a new option for quick import. We have a new feature to resolve missing resources. We have the Browseware VStitcher plugin and the Substance Painter plugin and material import. So for streamlined import, we've made a number of improvements. One that I find to be very useful is you can now add to scene KeyShot package files. In the past, you've had to open these up separately, extract the BIP, and then import the BIP into the scene. So you can now bring those package files right into an existing KeyShot scene. When you're importing BIP or KSP files, you can filter those scene components. As you see in the screenshot here, there are some checkboxes, so you can decide to include or exclude geometry, cameras, environments, image styles, and studios. Of course, studios are a pro feature, so you will not have the option for those if you are running KeyShot HD. You can also import directly into a new or existing model set. Model sets are also a pro feature. And we've tried to improve the terminology for the settings for a little more clarity here. So you can see an example of that, the keep position relative to native origin, or apply materials from scene to matching source names. And then you might notice this checkbox option here at the bottom for enable quick import, and that allows you to bypass the import dialog completely to really streamline your import process. So let's take a closer look at that. So when you enable quick import, you're saving those settings as your default import options for that particular file type. And then next time you import that file type, it will skip the import dialog for subsequent imports. In preferences, you can define those default settings for each of the file types that are supported on import. And you can always show the import dialog again by going to File, Import Dialog, or holding Alt when you drag and drop a model into the real-time view. Resolve missing resources is a new dialog that will show if you're missing textures or environments or other reference files from your scene. And this allows you to browse to a folder path to essentially relink those assets so that you don't get all those red log errors showing up. The Browseware VStitcher plugin is new to our plugin assortment. And for now, this is a pretty simple one-time transfer, but it allows you to render your VStitcher models in KeyShot and include all the textures on those. So no live linking yet, but we do have some thoughts for improving this in the future. We'd love to hear from anyone that is using VStitcher to see what would best help your workflow. And here's a screenshot of VStitcher, and you can see we created this little KeyShot crew neck. And when you click render to KeyShot, it sends over the file in the correct pose with all those textures included. The Substance Painter plugin and material import is another new one. When you install the Substance Painter plugin, this will add a KeyShot 9 plus export configuration to Substance Painter, and that will save out your Substance Painter texture set. And then we have a new tools menu, which I'll dig into in a little more detail later, where you can then import that Substance Painter texture set, and the material is automatically generated with all the maps being hooked up correctly to the new generic material type, giving you a one-to-one appearance of your model and your textures in KeyShot. And here is a screenshot, an example of what that looks like. So you can see this small dialog here. We've pointed to the lantern texture set, and then it will automatically create those materials, which you can then drag and drop to apply into your scene. And then we've opened up the material graph here where you can see the individual maps hooked up to the correct inputs on the new generic material type, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and allows you to accurately represent those Substance Painter materials inside of KeyShot. All right, the next category of features is workflow and setup. One of the big ticket items is, of course, GPU mode, which I'm sure everybody is excited to hear more about. We also have the models library and cloud library models, the tools menu, as I mentioned earlier. We have some pin interaction improvements to the HDRI editor, which is a pro-only feature. We have a couple configurator improvements and new features, and also a couple new animation features. So GPU mode, this is an exciting one. For the first time in the history of KeyShot, you can now render on the GPU. And this is exclusively on the GPU, so not a hybrid solution combining CPU and GPU. This is rendering exclusively on the GPU, and it gives users freedom to choose based on the hardware that you have invested in. So if you have purchased a number of NVIDIA RTX cards or supported GPUs, you can now take advantage of those to render locally and in real time. It's not currently supported by network rendering, but we do have plans to support that in the future. So what's great about supporting the GPU for rendering is the ease of local performance scaling. You can now just purchase another graphics card, plug it into your machine, and increase your performance, which is pretty exciting. So this does require the NVIDIA Maxwell microarchitecture. I'm sure there are lots of questions on if my GPU is supported. So if you do have that question, I would suggest to search Google for your graphics card to see if it does use the Maxwell microarchitecture. And if it is supported, then you will see a GPU button up on the ribbon. And you can also control which GPUs are being allocated for rendering. So I mentioned earlier that I do have 3 graphics cards in this machine. I have one that's dedicated to running my displays, so I am not using that for rendering. I have the 2 Quadro 4000s, which I do have allocated for rendering. And this is pretty cool and pretty exciting. You can, for example, use one card to render in real time, one card to render in the background, and you can really improve your rendering efficiency taking advantage of GPUs. Definitely one thing to keep in mind is that the GPU memory is limited to the card with the lowest value, and we're not yet supporting NVLink to combine those the GPU memory of multiple cards, but we are planning to support that in the future. So I think maybe one of the biggest questions will be, will GPU render faster? Well, it depends. Of course, it depends on the scene and depends on your hardware, but a good way to think about it is that the GPU is the brawn and CPU is the brains. So GPU pretty much uses brute force to render your scenes, whereas the CPU is a little more intelligent and is able to handle complex lighting, complex materials, and those types of things a little better. So you are limited by GPU memory, and that is in regards to different types of scenes and also the resolution that you're rendering at. So the best thing I would suggest is that you can give it a try, and you should be able to see quite quickly whether your scene is compatible, if it fits in the GPU memory, and how the quality appears. So here is an example that I rendered on my workstation machine. So this is a 32 thread Threadripper 1950X that I rendered at 1 minute. This is a 2K image. So you can see there is quite a bit of noise here, which is typical for this kind of white on white scenes with lots of shadows. And we can compare that to 1 minute on a Quadro 4000. And you can see that the noise is drastically reduced there. So again, I'll go back to the CPU rendering and the GPU. So at 1 minute, you're seeing quite a big improvement on the level of noise there. And then another new feature, the denoiser, should be able to clean that right up. I'll get into that a little later. But yeah, GPU, very exciting. Yeah, we are very proud to now have support for the NVIDIA RTX ray tracing technology and give you guys the freedom to choose to use the hardware that works best for you and your workflow. Not all scenes will give you this level of improvement. Something, as I mentioned earlier, with more complex lighting, indirect illumination, that kind of thing. So something like an interior may not give this drastic of a difference. All right, moving on. The next feature that I'd like to talk about is the models library. So there is a new models tab that you'll find in the library in KeyShot 9. You can add your own commonly used models or scenes by clicking this little button up here in the right corner. So if you have scenes or models that you commonly use across a variety of scenes, you can add them there, and it makes it very quick to add those to your scene. You can filter out which components you would like to include or exclude when you're adding those to your library. Building off of that is the new cloud library models. So there is a new models tab in the cloud library, and these models are curated by Luxion staff, and we will continue to add high quality models with materials and textures applied to this models library. And you can download these straight into your KeyShot models library, drag and drop them into your scene to quickly add detail and context. I mentioned the tools menu earlier. So we have added a new tools button on the ribbon where geometry, material, and camera tools are grouped in one easily accessible menu. So your geometry tools such as split surfaces, split objects, you can find those there. Those are pro features. And then we have the new material importer tool. So you can see in the menu here, this shows the different material types that you can bring in with the material importer. I mentioned the substance painter set before, and we'll talk about AXF and U3M in a little bit. We have improved the set camera target tool, so you can now choose between a point, part, or a model when using that feature. And then an item of note is that the match perspective is now a KeyShot HD feature. That was a pro feature in the past. We have made some improvements to pin interaction in the HDRI editor. You can now isolate pins in the right click by using the right click menu or by holding Alt and left mouse button clicking on a pin. This is very helpful if you're trying to see the impact of just a single pin on your scene. You can also duplicate a pin by holding Alt and dragging on a pin in the canvas. And you can also copy and paste a selection of pins from one environment to another. And for now, you can do that by using copy and paste hotkeys. For the configurator improvements and new features, we have added a third level of dependency as a sub-component group. So now you can define model options that are exclusive to a component. So in this example, which will be included in KeyShot, is this door and door handle configurator. And if we look at this screenshot here, we can see we have the option to choose between 3 doors as our parent model. And for this door 1, we have 3 different handles that we can choose. And then as subcomponents, so the third level, we have options for different lock variations for each of those handles. You can also create custom configurator thumbnails. So you can load an image as a file for the thumbnail, or we have provided some tools to render right in KeyShot. You can render using a specific studio, showing it isolated or showing it in context with the parent model or associated component models. For the new animation features, we've added custom motion ease. So you can control part and camera animations with more flexibility. This new curve graph allows you to define custom motion ease, and you can access that by selecting the custom entry in the motion ease dropdown. So you can add individual keys, control interpolation and tangency from each of those keys. And you can also copy and paste curves across animations. And similarly, you can control material animations now with the curve graph. So what was the number fade in the past has been upgraded to the curve fade. And you can access that through the material graph by adding a curve fade animation. Again, you can add keys. So in this example, we just have a pretty simple curve, but you can add as many keys as you want to this curve. And yeah, have a lot of flexibility to control that. Category 3 is materials and textures. This is another very new, a very exciting new area of features. The RealCloth material, which we've seen some amazing examples from some of the beta testers. We have the Fuzz geometry shader, the generic material, which I touched on earlier with the substance painter importer, the Contour Procedural Texture, X-Rate, AXF 1.6 support, and Vizu U3M support. So the RealCloth material allows you to create highly detailed, realistic woven materials, and this is a pretty cool feature. It is quite advanced. As you can see, there are a lot of parameters that you can use to adjust, but of course we've provided a number of presets in the library that you can use as a starting point. So we have over 40 new materials in the library that were created using the RealCloth material. You're able to edit the mapping of those materials with control over warp and weft parameters. You can add stray flyaway fibers to give the material even more softness. And then users of KeyShot Pro can edit the weave pattern to really customize a cloth material specific to your needs. So here is an example created by Magnus Skogsrud. These incredible gloves that you can see this woven RealCloth material, and he has some flyaway fuzz fibers there to really add detail and give it that nice soft touch feeling. So kind of building off of the RealCloth material is the Fuzz geometry shader. So if you want to add softness to any material, you can do so with the Fuzz geometry shader. And this is not just limited to RealCloth. So you can add hair-like growth from the surface of any material. You can control the parameters shown here, length, radius, randomness, etc. And you can use the built-in appearance, or you can override the appearance with any material for the fuzz. And then you can use textures to further customize or animate. And yeah, we've seen some really cool examples from beta testers on this one as well. Here is an example from David Mers. He provided us with a tennis ball that will be included in KeyShot 9 as a demo scene. And you can see the little fuzz coming out of the tennis ball there. Very believable. Really nice level of detail you're able to achieve now with the Fuzz geometry shader. And this is a pro-only feature, as are the other geometry shaders such as displacement, bubbles, and flakes. Here's another example from Paul Lang. He's added some fuzz to this little cactus. The next material is the generic material, and this is based on the Disney BRDF model, and it can be used to achieve a wide variety of material finishes. And we are using this for that substance painter importer, the U3M material import. You can control metallic, sheen, clear coat, and more. You cannot achieve transparent materials with this kind of material, but you can achieve a wide variety of other material types. Here is an example of a few that were created using the generic material. So you can get some really nice metallic effects, some sheen effects. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what kind of materials you guys create with this one. Here's an example created by Dries Vervoort. This nice radial anisotropic textured metal material. Moving on from materials to textures, this is the ContourProcedural Texture, which is essentially the tune material in the form of a procedural texture. which allows you to add an illustration-like effect on top of real-world materials such as metal or glass. And you can use it to drive texture channels such as color, roughness, and what I've found most useful is opacity, which you can see in the screenshot here. We've added a emissive material as a label with the opacity controlled by the contour. You can see in this thumbnail that it creates then a blue outline or whatever color your emissive material is, or the material of your choice around the base material. And we have included a number of sample materials in the library for the ContourProcedural Texture as well. And what I found to be quite useful is to drag and drop those into your labels list, which again you can see here, allowing you to create that outline effect. And here is an example of what that looks like. So we have the simple polished chrome with the contour procedural used to define a flat black material to give this nice illustration outline effect around that polished chrome. We are supporting the X-Rite AXF 1.6. So the AXF material is output from the X-Rite TAC7 scanner, and the 1.6 support provides support for translucency and cloudy plastic-like materials. We do have some examples of those that will be on the cloud library when KeyShot 9 is released. And again, you use the tools, the new tools feature to import those materials. And this one uses the measured material type, which you can see in the screenshot, and just points to that AXF file. And depending on the way you've scanned the material, you have some different options for adjustments there. In the case of the translucency, you can adjust absorption and scattering to further customize the look of those materials. And here are some examples of that. This is a rendering with some sample files that will be available on the cloud library, so you can see what kind of appearance you're able to achieve now with those. Another material that takes advantage of scanned samples is the Vizu U3M. So with this one, again, you use the tools material importer, and similar to the substance painter importer, all the texture maps will automatically be hooked up to the appropriate inputs of the generic material type to take advantage of those materials you've scanned on your Vizu scanner. The last category of features that I'll talk about today is image and output. So I think maybe my favorite feature in KeyShot 9 is Denoise, which I will be demoing after this. We've added a few options for the photographic image style, copy screenshot to clipboard, and the web configurator. So Denoise is a deep learning denoiser and is available for both the CPU and the GPU. And this applies to real-time and render output. So in real time, the denoise will refresh every 5 seconds. And as the samples increase, you will get a better quality from the denoised image. In render output, we apply denoise at the very end of the render to give you the best quality results. This works really well for those kind of scattering medium or cloudy plastic type materials can also do a really good job at eliminating some fireflies and hot pixels. So yeah, looking forward to demoing this and showing you what can be achieved. It is in both the basic and photographic image styles. And you can see in the screenshot here, there's an option for to control the blend. So you can blend the denoised image with the original image if you need to pull out some textures and fine detail. Sometimes the denoise option can overpower those if they are very fine. For the photographic image style, we've added some options for the response curve, which you can see here: linear, low contrast, and high contrast. So now the linear option provides very similar results to the basic image style if you want that kind of appearance, but with more options. For example, if you want to add a front plate, you can now do that using the linear response curve in the photographic image style and get a very similar look to the basic image style. Copy screenshot to clipboard is a kind of a minor feature, but actually very powerful, and I found it to be very useful. You can assign a custom hotkey to this, so you can just press a button, copy your screenshot to the clipboard, and paste it into Slack or email and send that out. And then finally, the web configurator. So this is another very exciting new feature. And we have made some changes to the licensing structure kind of on the back end. So KeyShot XR was the add-on in the past. We have now changed that to KeyShot Web as the add-on you purchase, which then includes KeyShot XR along with the new web configurator. So the KeyShot configurator is for pro users, and if you want to output the configurator to view on the web as a fully rendered, zoomable, static set of images for viewing and configuration, then you will want to purchase the KeyShot Web add-on. And it's very similar to KeyShot XR, where you get the HTML output, all the associated images and files, and you can share that bundle, zip it up and share it, or you can host it on a website. And here is a screenshot of what that looks like, but actually I have the example in my web browser here, which I believe, yeah, I shared that in the chat panel, so you can actually click that link and explore it for yourself. So here, again, these are fully rendered, zoomable images. So, you know, depending on your image resolution, you can view this at 100%, and then we can toggle through the different options we have. So in this awesome example created by Tim Joe, we have 3 different sizes for this KeyShot Assistant Bluetooth speaker type thing. And then for each of those, we have a number of model variations and material variations. So we can change the top design, see what that looks like. We have this body. So one has a seam with a tag here, and one is seamless as a metal mesh. And so if we look at the seam version, this tag would be an example of that 3rd level of dependency support that I discussed earlier. And then we can define some different material options. So we can choose our different graphics. Again, these are custom thumbnails that we're now able to add in KeyShot 9. You can also change out the speaker, and this uses the RealCloth with some very subtle flyaway fibers in there. And then we can change the view. But again, these are static images. And yeah, you can define the view as different studios. So you could have a backplate in here, for example, different camera angles. So this is pretty cool. I'm very excited to see some user-created content using the web configurator. All right, so that's it for the presentation slides. Now let's jump on in. We have about 20 minutes, so yeah, it gives us a little bit of time to go over some of the new features. The two that I wanted to definitely demo are GPU mode and denoise. So I pulled out this cool scene since it is Halloween from Jared Bogue. So right now we're running CPU, and you can see there is a GPU button on the ribbon. So when I click that, it's going to load up my materials onto the GPU. And once you've loaded those materials, then you can toggle between CPU and GPU very quickly. And then in the heads up display, you can identify you know, the memory, the amount of memory that's used, and the samples versus the frames per second. So let's let's let it sit for a little bit on the CPU so we can compare these two. We are getting some little hot pixels in there from the lights in the scene, so we can enable denoise, and that cleans those right up. And then as we let this sit, it's going to continue to improve the quality of that image. And then we can turn the GPU on. So now we're running the GPU, and we can turn denoise on. So between GPU mode and denoise, they are pretty powerful to really get you to some smooth render results quickly. So maybe we'll switch over to this startup studio and kind of move around to see how this looks in action. So right now we're running the GPU with no denoise on. You can see there are some little hot pixels in there. When you enable denoise, it should clean those right up. And then again, the quality of the image will improve as you let it sit. All right, let me bring up a couple other scenes, and while I'm doing so, we can open it up for questions. Josh, do you want to jump in here and let me know what kind of questions we have coming in?
Oh boy, lots of questions. Thanks, thanks, Rex. That was awesome. So, lots of questions on licensing and upgrades. I would just recommend, if anybody has questions about that, email license@luxion.com or get with your sales rep on your upgrade options. So some questions on denoising here, Rex. Is the denoising happening live, or is it a secondary operation?
So yeah, you can actually define how often you want the denoise to refresh. So if we go into Preferences, General, you can see there's an option for denoise refresh time, which is set to 5 seconds by default, and I found this to be a pretty good value. Haven't found myself changing that. And then you can see in the heads up display how often that's running. Actually in CPU mode, you can see it's refreshing every 5 seconds, so it's currently idle, and then it'll run. So let's maybe zoom in here, disable depth of field, and then we can see, so it's running now, and then every 5 seconds that'll refresh. And then when you render, for your render output, you won't actually see the denoise happening in the render output window. It will be applied as a post process after the fact to give you the best quality results. And then we take advantage of a couple render passes to make sure we're giving you the best quality results. So once you render that out, you'll see those passes output alongside it, and you can feel free to delete those after the render is completed.
Thanks. And is this available for CPU or for CPU and GPU?
Yes, denoise is available for both CPU and GPU. So you can see the denoise button on the ribbon, and that'll be available to turn on and off, whether you're running the CPU, which I'm running now. So here is the CPU with denoise, and then we can enable the GPU and also have access to that feature as well. And so the button on the ribbon is controlling the denoise option in the image tab. And again, that's available for basic and photographic image styles. So there's that checkbox for denoise, and if you keep an eye on that, when I toggle on the ribbon, it's just controlling that option in the image style. If you do see the denoise button grayed out on the ribbon, that means that your image style is locked. So in order to access that, you want to unlock your image style, and then you can toggle that freely.
Thanks, Rex. Do have another question here. Where is it? We're getting a lot of questions. How does RealCloth compare to a 3D scan of cloth is one.
Yeah, so if we zoom in here, you can see this actually replicates the fibers very accurately, the actual weave, the overlapping, and then the little fuzz. That this is not something that you could achieve with a scan of a material. It's just extremely detailed and highly realistic.
And some people are wondering about the specs on the computer, CPU and GPU.
Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this is a dual Xeon CPU. So it has a total of 72 threads, but I've knocked it back to about half. And the GPU, so if we switch into GPU mode, you can see there is a GPU usage drop down, so you can control which cards are running in KeyShot. So this K2200 is what I have powering my displays, and then I have 2 RTX 4000s dedicated to rendering. And then this example of the RealCloth, if we collapse some of these accordions and open up the geometry. You can see this is set to transparent, so you can also achieve transparent meshes. So I can toggle that so you can see the difference there, start seeing through. And then we can maybe turn on Denoise. Something to keep in mind is when using Denoise and you do have fine details or textures, sometimes it can be a little aggressive and overpower those. So you can control the Denoise blend to control how much of the original image shows through there.
So here's an interesting question for you. Wind is asking, if I open two KeyShot windows at the same time, one using GPU rendering, can a CPU be used on the other?
Yes. Yeah, and you can actually say render in the real-time view on your CPU and then have GPU rendering running in the background, so you can kind of improve your efficiency. So let's say, for example, we wanted to render this image on the GPU or on the CPU. So we can then go to render in the background using my RTX 4000s. So we can send that off to render in the background and give that a second to kick off. And once that starts rendering, we can then go back into KeyShot, disable the GPU, and then run KeyShot on the CPU. So we have this guy running in the background. If I unpause that, now we're using the CPU while we have this GPU rendering running in the background. So yeah, you can definitely take advantage of both CPU and GPU simultaneously, or if you have multiple GPUs, you can use one to render offline and one to render real time. And yeah, the same goes for having two KeyShot sessions open simultaneously. Cool. All right. Well, we've gone over our time a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Hopefully, you are as excited as I am about the new features and improvements in KeyShot 9. Again, this video will be up on our YouTube page shortly. Please get engaged in the comments section, subscribe to our channel, give us some comments and let us know what you think about these features. Check out the new learning content that Ryan and Kareem will be creating and posting up shortly. And yeah, we're looking forward to next month's webinar, which we're actually going to take a deeper dive into RealCloth, so we can really uncover some of the capabilities that you can achieve with it. So we will see you then. Thanks.